Hello listeners, and welcome to yet another special video production from Cardboard of the Rings, the bi-weekly podcast about the Lord of the Rings, the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. This is Mitch, one of the co-hosts, and today I'm here to show you a very special production. This might be the first of a series of videos in which I'm actually going to be doing a two-handed or double fist solo playthrough. So I'm actually going to be playing two different decks here today, and this is going to be an homage kind of to my love of the dwarfs that was recently kind of infringed upon by my newfound love for the new spirit version of Glorfindel that was just released. So this is a goal of before the Shadow and Flame adventure pack comes out, before that concludes our Dwaro Delph cycle. It was my goal to kind of merge my love of the dwarves and my love of some of the new Noldor cards together to try and make two extremely powerful, extremely synergistic decks that'll hopefully be able to eventually destroy the Balrog. So the scenario that I'm going to be testing these two brand new decks out against is going to be the first scenario of the Khazad-dum Deluxe expansion, Into the Pit. But before we go ahead and get started, why don't I go ahead and show you guys the two deck lists that I've put together. And my goal for this, what is soon to be series of videos, is to get a lot of interaction from you guys, from the viewers, the listeners, the community, to see if we can try and tweak these decks together to make something exceptionally powerful that's eventually going to be able to kill Durin's Bane and triumph over hopefully every scenario. So taking a look at these two decks, our first deck is going to be Gimli, Bifur, and Thalin, and our second deck, in keeping with that dwarf theme, is Dane Ironfoot. But as you can see, I stray from that dwarf-only theme pretty quickly as I use Theodred as yet another leadership hero, and of course, our game-breakingly powerful spirit version of Glorfindel. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the two different deck lists now, and I'm going to do a brief overview for what to expect from each of these decks. I'm going to go ahead and start with this left-hand deck first. This is the Gimli, Bifur, and Thalin Tactics and Lore deck. And what you can expect to see from this is a lot of potent questing ability from Thalin and Bifur, and even Gimli himself can contribute 3 willpower. Thalin is going to be doing some direct damage to the enemies, and that's why I included those Gondorian Spearmen to finish the job. So cards like Goblin Swordsman, Goblin Spearman get dumped into the staging area. During questing, Thalin deals them 1 damage, and the Spearmen can finish them off. I've got Erebor Battlemasters in here to take advantage of a very large number of dwarves, hopefully coming into play. And I also have the attachment Legacy of Durin to do the exact same thing. I have Wardens of Healing to provide a very potent healing force in this deck. Erebor Hammersmith is a dwarf that can return some attachments from my discard pile to my hand. And of course the Erebor Record Keeper is an absolutely extremely powerful ally at 1 lore resource for with Dane on the table, what's going to be a 2 willpower ally. Gandalf is going to make an appearance in both of these decks, and of course Miner of the Iron Hills is going to be useful for getting rid of condition attachments like Watchful Eyes, Sacked, and cards like that. Veteran Axehand, of course, another dwarf, and has got some potent attack power there. The events pretty much go without saying. Daron's Runes is, for me, an auto-include in any lore deck. Radagast's Cunning and Secret Paths allows me to maximize my questing potential every turn by getting rid of things like Sigil Mineshaft or 3 or more threat enemies. Khazad takes perfect advantage of the dwarf synergy. Ringmail, I think, is going to be great for Dane Ironfoot, Dwaro Delphax for my dwarves, and Asphalloth, of course, to put on Glorfindel in the other deck just to absolutely plow through locations. Moving on to the second deck, I've got, of course, Dane Ironfoot, who's just incredible with dwarves, and the reason that I picked Theodred is just because there's so many different spheres on the table. He's going to be able to toss extra resources to maybe Glorfindel, maybe Bifur, whoever it happens to be, just to make sure that I can get whatever card I need on the table when I need it. Bifer being able to kind of suction resources from some of the other heroes is also going to be incredibly useful, just to make sure I can afford to play whatever cards I need at the time. In this deck, I've got Bofer, who's a huge quester. He's going to drop onto the table with 3 willpower. Arwen being able to give Dane additional defense and Sentinel is really, really great, since I'm not going to have Frodo Baggins at my disposal here. Sigil Miner is kind of an interesting choice, so the resource costs of the cards in this deck are actually pretty low, and I'm not really looking to take advantage of the Sigil Miner's resource generation. It's going to be another dwarf on the table. It enters play with 2 willpower. It can be readied through events like Lure of Moria, so that's going to be an interesting choice. I wasn't sure if I should use West Road Traveler, but I think this is probably the better choice for this deck. Gandalf, of course, makes an appearance. Imladris Stargazer is going to allow both of these decks to rearrange cards. Longbeard Elder is going to be an awesome 3 willpower, since I've got plenty of leadership resource generation, and of course events like Durin's Song, Hasty Stroke, A Test of Will are pretty standard for dwarf decks. I'll be able to sneak attack Gandalf, hopefully. I've got Elrond's Council in place of the Gladrim's Greeting, just because I've got Glorfindel on the table, and that's going to help save up some spirit resources for cards just like Ancient Matham, Unexpected Courage. Light of Valinor is going to be really useful to give me a Glorfindel that can quest for 3, attack for 3, which really helps that second deck in combat. And then I've got cards like Steward of Gondor, and Dunedain Warning is specifically because I'm not taking advantage of things like Song of Wisdom and a Burning Brand to try and make Dane Ironfoot or another defender immune from shadow effects. So this was my initial thought for these 2 decks. I've played dwarf decks plenty of times before, so this is kind of a nice little merger between the dwarves and more Glorfindel-focused decks. So, returning to our game, why don't I go ahead and explain how I'm going to be doing things here. So to start things off, why don't we go ahead and shuffle both of our decks, and there might be a little bit of a delay sometimes. I'm going to be playing this on 2 separate monitors. I'm only going to be recording the video on my main monitor that you're going to be able to see here, so I'm going to have the first player, my left monitor, have control of most of these cards. So I'm going to have control of both players' heroes, and I'm actually going to put player 2's hand on the table here once we get things started. So just to kick things off, I'm going to go ahead and shuffle my decks twice, as always, as anyone who watches these videos by now knows, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my opening hand of 6 cards. So for player 1, I think I like what I see. I've got like a Legacy of Durin, which is hopefully going to help get me some good card draw. I've got an attachment that's going to be okay. Asphalloth is going to be really helpful for getting rid of locations. I would have liked to see some cards like Erebor Record Keeper, but again, this is going to be the very first game I've played with these decks, so it's not too big of a deal. Off screen right now, I'm going to go ahead and draw 6 cards for deck number 2, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this now. The cards I got were Longbeard Elder, Lure of Moria, Arwen Undomiel, Bofer, Unexpected Courage, and Ancient Matham. And in this case, I think I'm actually going to take a mulligan. Whoops, and that just dumped my cards back into my hand here. So let me go ahead and put those back on my deck, shuffle it, and then I'll take a mulligan. Okay, so let me go ahead and move these cards to the table. So like I said, I'm going to actually go ahead and show my hand here, and what I drew was a Durin Song, an Ancient Matham, a Hasty Stroke, Imladris Stargazer, a Light of Valinor, and a Steward of Gondor. So a pretty strong opening hand, hopefully I'll be able to do pretty well with this, and why don't we go ahead and get started. So like I mentioned, this quest is going to be Into the Pit, and let's go ahead and look at our very first quest phase here. So it reads, for our setup, we have to search the encounter deck for an East Gate and a Cave Torch. Put East Gate into play as the active location, and have the first player, which is going to be my Tactics and Lore deck here, attach the Cave Torch to a hero of his choice. So the Cave Torch does count as a restricted attachment, so I wanted to pick a hero that's pretty unlikely to have any kind of Dwaro Delph axes or ring mails attached to him, so I went ahead and picked Bifur. And this Cave Torch is going to allow me to burn away some of the dark locations that are going to be coming off of the deck here. I've got to make the East Gate into the active location, so right away there's a 7 quest point location sitting here. It's immune to player card effects, and until my team of 6 heroes here is actually able to burst down this East Gate, they cannot engage enemies, and there are no engagement checks to be made. As soon as this location does leave play, however, I have to add the first hall to the staging area, so that's kind of thematically representing the players knocking down the doors of the East Gates and entering that first hall of Moria. We're eventually going to cross over the bridge of Khazad-dum, and then that's going to essentially complete this very first quest for our entrance into the mines of Moria here. So like I mentioned, I've also set the first hall and the bridge of Khazad-dum aside, but out of play. Those 2 locations are right here. And now I have to shuffle the encounter deck. So I've got the encounter deck nice and shuffled, and I transition to quest phase 1B. So 7 quest points, and of course, when revealed, I reveal 1 encounter card per player and add it to the staging area. So why don't I go ahead and do that now? It looks like quest card number 1 is going to be a Signs of Conflict, so pretty uneventful, but Doomed 2 and Surge. I'm going to go ahead and increase the threat of both of my decks by 2, as you can see right here. Deck number 1 is going to be sitting at 29, deck number 2 at a little bit lower, 26, and this card surges, so I've got to go ahead and replace this beginning card with a Lightless Passage, so 4 threat beginning the game in the staging area. Card number 2 is going to be a Patrol Leader, so pretty nasty guy. His 30 engagement cost is awfully low. He's not going to be engaging with anyone because of this East Gate, but certainly a nasty bad guy sitting here in the staging area, and his forced ability is going to make him relatively difficult to kill. So let's go ahead and see how everything goes as we start our first turn. I've already made this first dwarf deck, player 1, the first player, so I'm going to go ahead and draw 1 card for each player. I got a Miner of the Iron Hills for deck number 1. Deck number 2, it looks like they're going to get an Unexpected Courage, and I'm going to go ahead and do resources for all of my characters here. So for my beginning play, what do I want to do? I think my very first move is I'm going to be paying 1 lore resource from Bifur in order to attach a Legacy of Durin to Bifur. So as soon as I play any dwarf character, at least this first player plays any dwarf character, I'm going to be able to trigger this response and to draw 1 card. Really useful since I started play with 3 dwarf characters in my hand here. And after playing that Legacy of Durin, I think that's going to be all that I'm going to play for the first player. I've got this Dwaro Delph axe sitting in my hand, but I think I'm going to wait until I can get this Erebor Battlemaster into play to lay down that axe, just so I have some really heavy-hitting ally on the table. So for player number 2, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my different cards here, and right off the bat, I'm going to play 1 resource from Glorfindel in order to put this Light of Valinor on Glorfindel. So he's no longer going to have to exhaust to commit to the quest. And I'm also going to pay 2 resources, one from Theodred and one from Dane, in order to play this Steward of Gondor, and I think I'm going to put the Steward of Gondor also on Bifur. I'll go ahead and trigger that right away since there's no reason not to, and I'm going to go ahead and add 2 resources to Bifur immediately. At this point, I think I'm pretty much good, and I'm going to go ahead and move into questing. So since I've got this East Gate location where enemies cannot engage with me and no engagement checks are made yet, I'm going to go ahead and commit Gimli, Bifur, and Thalin to the quest. So player 1 alone is going to be committing a total of 8 to the quest. And for player number 2, I'm going to go ahead and commit Theodred and Glorfindel. So Glorfindel is going to not exhaust to commit to the quest, and Theodred is going to choose Glorfindel as the target of his ability. So player 2 is going to contribute 4 to the quest. It looks like I'm going to have a total of 12, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and stage 2 cards from our encounter deck. So card number 1 is going to be another Signs of Conflict. So Doomed 2 is going to raise both players' threat by 2, and then of course this surges. So our replacement card 1 is looking to be a Stairs of Nain. So 2 threat, 4 quest points. Let's go ahead and draw another card. And that's going to be a Goblin Swordsman. So as soon as this enters play, Thalin is going to deal 1 damage to it, and it looks like we've got a total of 1, 3, 6, 10 threat out in the staging area. So at this point, we're only going to be making 2 progress. That's really pretty pathetic, but I think I'm going to go ahead and exhaust the Cave Torch in order to put 3 progress tokens on our Lightless Passage here. Well, I'm actually going to wait until quest resolution is done. So I'm going to make 2 progress, and now I'm going to go ahead and move to the travel phase. So the first player doesn't have any characters to exhaust, so I can't travel here. At this point, I'm basically going to say I don't want to travel. I'm going to trigger the Cave Torch at this point. Whoops, that's a damage. And I'm going to go ahead and add 3 progress tokens to that Lightless Passage. When the Cave Torch exhausts, I have to discard the top card of the encounter deck. If it's an enemy, it's added, not revealed, to the staging area, and let's see what we get. We get a Watchful Eyes, which is not an enemy, so it is simply discarded. It's kind of a shame that that came up just because, you know, I've got plenty of Miner of the Iron Hills here to get rid of condition attachments, but be that as it may, we're going to go ahead and transition to the engagement phase. So since we've got the East Gate here, I can't engage enemies optionally or otherwise, so we're going to go ahead and skip engagement, skip combat, and we'll go right to the refresh phase. So I'm going to go ahead and increase both players' threats by 1. I'm going to make deck number 2 the active player, and I'm going to go ahead and move into the next round. So, I'm going to do 1 resource again for each of my heroes. I'm going to go ahead and trigger the Steward of Gondor right away. So, Bifur is sitting very pretty with 5 resources already. Going to draw another card for each player. And it looks like deck number 2 got Durin's Song. Deck number 1 got a lovely Warden of Healing for once I start taking some damage. So I'm thinking it was maybe a good choice to put that Steward of Gondor on Bifur, but we'll have to see how the game progresses here. So player 2 has got their planning phase first. And right now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play... I think I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 resources for an Unexpected Courage on Gimli. So even though I might not burst down this quest phase quite yet, it might be a little while until I've got some combat. Just in case I do break through unexpectedly, I really want to be able to ready Gimli to take some additional actions, get some extra attacks going. I'm also going to go ahead and... it looks like I'm going to hold off on playing any kind of leadership cards, so it's nice to know that I've definitely got these 2 Durin songs to really bolster a Dwarven hero should I need it. You know, if I get a really nasty shadow effect or something like that, but for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm done with player 2's actions. So for player 1, I think right away I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 from Biffer for a Miner of the Iron Hills, and I'm immediately going to trigger this Legacy of Durin to draw 1 card. So Quick Strike is a very valuable card to have in my hand here. I'm going to pay 2 more resources from Biffer in order to play an Erebor Battlemaster, and it's going to result in me drawing another card immediately, which is a Gondorian Spearman, which is perfect for fueling this Thalin and Gondorian Spearman combo. So this Goblin Swordsman enters play. It's already got a damage token on it. As soon as the Gondorian Spearman is declared as defender, the Goblin Swordsman is going to be immediately killed. So let me go ahead and drain some resources from my characters to pay for that Erebor Battlemaster, which is already entering play with +1 attack strength for each other dwarf character I control. So 1, 2, 3, 4 dwarf characters, and an additional +1 because Dane is in play and ready. It's going to be a 6 attack dwarf already for a measly 3 willpower, which is, or 3 resources, which is absolutely crazy. At this point, I could play that Dwerodelf Axe. He's 1 point shy of being able to kill that patrol leader. I don't think the patrol leader is going to be harassing me anytime soon, so I think I'm going to go ahead and hold off on playing that. And then I also stripped 2 resources from Biffer since he had that original 5, and I'm going to go ahead and put Asphaloth into play on Glorfindel. So I'm going to be able to exhaust Asphaloth in order to start placing progress tokens on locations at will. So between this and the Cave Torch, I should be in an excellent position to really tear through locations. So it's looking like this East Gate is probably going to be coming down in relative short order. So at this point, I think I'm pretty much good to move on to questing, so why don't I see what I can do? I'm going to go ahead and pick some characters now. So the first player that's going to commit characters is going to be the second player. And I think just like last time, I'm going to do Glorfindel plus Theodred, so for a total of 4. And once again, Theodred is going to go ahead and target Glorfindel with his ability. Player 2, I think I'm going to do Gimli, Biffer, Thalin, and I think I'm also going to commit the Miner of the Iron Hills, so this time it's going to be a total of 9 committed to the quest, for a grand total between both players of 13. I'm going to hold off on using my Cave Torch and Asphaloth until I know exactly what's coming off the encounter deck. That way, if there's something really nasty, you know, I can go ahead and try and manipulate the number of threat in the staging area, so maybe I can avoid engaging with enemies until I get the Gondorian Spearman on the table. Whatever it happens to be, I think it's just a much better idea to wait until I see what I'm up against. I'm going to go ahead and use Unexpected Courage to ready Gimli, just in case I pull a card like Dark and Dreadful, so let's see what I pull for staging this round. Card number 1 is looking to be a Goblin Follower. So when revealed, it's going to engage the last player. So even though I cannot optionally engage enemies and no engagement checks are made, this Goblin Follower completely circumvents that. It's got a total of 6 is what it's going to have its hit points plus its defense, so if my Erebor Battlemaster is able to take 1 swing, he's going to be able to completely fell and kill this Goblin Follower. But let's see what our second card is. And our second card is looking to be yet another Signs of Conflict. Why not? So again, I'll trigger that Doomed 2, and it surges, and our replacement card is Crumbling Ruins. So when revealed, each player has to exhaust a character and discard the top card of his deck if able. If the printed cost of the discarded card is equal to or higher than the remaining hit points of the exhausted character, discard the exhausted character. So this has the potential to be absolutely miserable. So I'm going to pick one character for each player, exhaust it, and draw a card. And let's see if we happen to lose those characters. So I think I'm actually going to play a pretty dangerous game here. And I'm going to go ahead and, I'll leave that on the table. I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Gimli. And the card I reveal is going to be an Erebor Battlemaster. So this card is going to be discarded, and it does not have a cost equal to or higher than the remaining hit points. He has 5, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in my discard pile. For our second player, I'm going to go ahead and discard a card. I'll exhaust Glorfindel. So that card I'm going to discard is a sneak attack. So definitely I could have gone without discarding this, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world having this in my discard pile, and it's certainly better than losing a hero. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my discard pile over there, and now why don't I total up the threat in the staging area. So it's going to be 7, 8, 9, a total of 10. As is, I'll make 3 quest progress. I could go ahead and use Asphalloth or the Cave Torch to try and burn through this lightless passage and put some points on this Stairs of Nain, but if I were to, get rid of this 4 threat it contributes and make an additional 4 threat, it would be enough to get rid of this East Gate, but then this Goblin Swordsman would engage with me, the Patrol Leader would engage with me, and since I've got all of my characters here exhausted, it's got the potential for some really nasty, undefended attacks, so I think at this point I'm going to play it a little bit safe and wait one more round until tearing through some of these cards here. I am going to go ahead and trigger Asphalloth to put 2 progress tokens on this Stairs of Nain, however, and I've got the 3 quest points from questing successfully, so I've only got 2 more points left on this East Gate location. So before I move on to the travel phase, I'm going to go ahead and put 1 point of damage on this Goblin Follower. I forgot to go ahead and trigger Thalin's ability, and this will give Glaurung one less thing to bitch about in this video, so always a good thing there. For travel, I'm going to go ahead and skip that, so the Stairs of Nain and the Lightless Passage I'm easily going to be able to burn away on my next turn, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and move past the engagement phase, of course, because the East Gate is still the active location, and I'm going to go ahead and move into combat. So I'm going to go ahead and deal out 1 shadow card for this Goblin Follower, and I don't really have any convenient defenders here. Ideally, it's really nice if I've got Arwen Undomiel in play to do some sentinel defending, but that does not happen to be the case. Since I can obviously see both players' hands, I know I've got this hasty stroke here in case something goes really wrong. In a 2-player environment, you could easily have the other player hint that they can deal with shadow effects or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this Goblin Follower's attack as undefended. So why don't I go ahead and flip this card? And it just so happens to be attacking enemy gets +2 attack strength. So that would be enough to kill any of my allies, any of my heroes, I mean. So why don't I go ahead and strip 1 resource off Glorfindel, and I'm going to go ahead and play this Hasty Stroke card here. So, kind of awkward because I have to switch between monitors to discard cards, but Hasty Stroke is gone, this shadow effect is cancelled, and I'm going to go ahead and assign the 3 damage from that attack to Gimli. So he's going to have his attack value right now boosted by 3, so he and the Erebor Battlemaster are both going to be at 6, because of Gimli's ability and because of the Battlemaster's ability, combined with Dane Ironfoot being on the table. For attacking back, I'm going to go ahead and have the Erebor Battlemaster swing, and again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 other dwarves in play. Dane adds an additional 1 attack, so he's going to swing for 6, which is going to be enough to put 4 damage on this Goblin Follower. More than enough to kill it, so I'm going to go ahead and dump it in my discard pile and move to the refresh phase. So I'm going to refresh all of my characters, and for some reason the attachments never want to refresh. I'm going to go ahead and boost both players' threats up by 1. I'm going to make the lore and tactics deck the first player, and I'm going to go ahead and begin my next round. So I'm going to draw 1 card for each player. I'm going to go ahead and do my resources as per usual. I'll trigger Steward of Gondor, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what I drew. So I got a Veteran Axe Hand and a Gandalf. So Gandalf is looking like he could be pretty useful in trying to tear apart this patrol leader, but I'm not exactly sure if I want to play him this turn. So at this point, player 1 gets to play their cards first, and I think what I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3 resources from my tactics characters in order to put a Gondorian Spearman into play on the table, and I'm also going to attach a Dwerodelf Axe to Dane Ironfoot here. And I think that's going to be all I'm going to do for this player. I'm gonna go ahead and move to player 2, and I think what I want to do is I'm gonna spend 5 resources and I'm gonna put this Gandalf into play. So as soon as Gandalf comes into play, I'm going to go ahead and have him pick this patrol leader to take 4 damage. And what's going to happen here is before the patrol leader is dealt damage, I have to discard the top card of the encounter deck. If it's an enemy, that damage is canceled. So hopefully I'm going to get lucky, but let's see what happens. Top card discarded is an enemy, which is very frustrating. So Gandalf has absolutely no effect when he comes into play. So the patrol leader throws one of his minions in the way. Gandalf's little flash does absolutely jack shit, which is too bad, so at least I tried. And then I think at this point I'm going to be ready for questing, so player number 1 has to go first. I'm not going to have to do too much questing this round, since I just want to do at least 2 progress to burst down the East Gate, start dealing with some of these enemies. The Gondorian Spearman's going to be able to make short work of the Goblin Swordsman. I've got plans for how to deal with the patrol leader, so I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and do Gimli and use Unexpected Courage to ready him. Bifur, Thalon, and the Miner of the Iron Hills. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and commit 9 to the quest here. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this side, and I'm going to do the standard 4. So pretty standard here. I'm going to have a total of 13 committed to the quest once again, and now I'm going to go ahead and stage 2 different encounter cards before I decide to deal with any of these locations I have sitting in play here. So card number 1 staged is going to be a Goblin Tunnel. So after a goblin's revealed from the encounter deck, remove a progress token from the current quest card. It's 7 progress tokens, which is pretty annoying, but only 2 threat, not the end of the world. Card number 2 is going to be yet another Goblin Tunnel. So again, 2 threat, but at least it's not an enemy to deal with, and I've certainly got plenty of things to deal with locations. I'm going to be dealing with a total of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 threats. So at this point, it's looking like I'm not going to quest successfully unless I, do some shenanigans here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and trigger the Cave Torch to this dark location, the Lightless Passage. So I'm going to go ahead and exhaust it to do the, I always add damage. To add 3 progress tokens, the Lightless Passage is going to be completely explored, but the Cave Torch triggers because it's exhausted, so discard top card of the encounter deck. If it's an enemy, it's added to the staging area, and it is not an enemy, so I've lucked out again. I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Asphalloth on Glorfindel to put 2 progress tokens on this Stairs of Nain. So it's going to have 4 out of its 4 progress tokens, and it too is going to be explored. So doing those 2 actions right there actually helped net me 6 fewer threat in the staging area. So now I'm just sitting at 8. That means I'm going to go ahead and make 5 progress. So 2 is absorbed by the East Gate. It's fully explored. I'll put that down here, explored and out of play. I'll go ahead and add 1 victory point for myself. And then that was going to be, I think, 3 more points added to our current quest phase. So only 4 quest points left until I can get rid of this quest phase here. Immediately, the first hall is going to be added to the staging area, and that's going to go ahead and sit right there. So 2 threat, each player has to raise their threat by 3 to travel there, but I think I'd much rather go ahead and Asphalloth that away next turn. And then as soon as this leaves play, of course, it kind of represents the players continuing through the first hall toward the bridge of Khazad-dum, where they're eventually going to encounter the Goblin Patrol, fight their way through it as they're looking for the Chamber of Records on the 7th level of Moria, trying to figure out the fate of Balin. So it's looking like that was pretty good for quest phase. I'm going to go ahead and move on to travel. I think I'm fine with leaving the Goblin Tunnels sitting there in the staging area, and now I'm going to finally get to an engagement phase where enemies are going to engage with me. So both of my players here have engagement threats higher than the engagement cost of 30 for this guy. First player is going to be first to conduct engagement checks, so I think I'm going to have him optionally engage Goblin Swordsman, and I'm going to have player 2 optionally engage this patrol leader, and the method to my madness is going to be revealed here shortly. Hopefully it's going to work out. Well, I guess there's a pretty strong chance it won't, but here's hoping. So, right off the bat, we'll go ahead and go to combat phase, dealing shadow cards to the first player first, and then the highest engagement cost. So this Goblin Swordsman is going to attack first, and I'm going to go ahead and declare my defender being the Gondorian Spearman. So as soon as he's declared a defender, that's 1 damage to the attacking enemy, and it's going to be immediately killed. That means its shadow card is going to be discarded with no effect, and it wouldn't have had any effect anyway, being the Dreadful Gap. But at least I won't have to deal with that location being in play when it can have such a huge quest point value. For player 2, it's not going to be quite so simple. So player 2 has this patrol leader, and I'm going to go ahead and declare my defender as Gandalf, which might seem a little bit strange, but bear with me. So it's going to be swinging for 4, and its shadow card is Add Goblin Swordsman to the staging area. So kind of unfortunate, but annoying more than bad. The Gandalf is not going to take any damage. 4 attack equals 4 defense, and now it's going to be my turn to attack back. So I'm going to go ahead and have Dane and Glorfindel attack together. So he's going to have an attack of 3. Glorfindel is going to have an attack of 3 for a combined total of 6. But as soon as Dane attacks, the patrol leader is going to take 1 point of damage, and this triggers its forced ability, so I've got to discard a card off the top of the encounter deck. If it's an enemy, he will not take that 1 point of damage, and that card is Burning Low, so he does take 1 point of damage. Now, at this point, he's got the combined 6 attack strength coming in. His defense is going to shave off 3 points, so he's got 3 incoming damage. And once again, that forced ability is going to activate. So I'm going to discard a card. Hopefully it's not an enemy. If it is, then I'm going to have to go ahead and deal with canceling that damage. So let's see what we get. Alright, it looks like once again I lucked out and it is not an enemy, so he's going to take 3 more points of damage and the patrol leader is going to be killed. So at this point I'm looking, it's actually looking very good for the players. So I'm going to go ahead and move into the refresh phase, refresh all of these cards that were not refreshed. I'm going to go ahead and discard that Gandalf at the very end of the round on monitor number 2, and I'm going to raise my threats. I'm going to make player 1 the first player, and now I'm going to go ahead and move into round 4. So as always, I'll go ahead and start by drawing a card. Looks like I got a Dunedain Warning and a Khazad-dum. I'm going to do my resources, one for each hero. I'm going to go ahead and trigger Steward of Gondor once again, and it's looking like player 1 is going to be first to act here. So I've got quite a bit of good stuff in my hand here. Right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and play 2 lore resources for a Miner of the Iron Hills. So that's going to be drawing 1 more card. And the Erebor Battlemaster, its strength is growing, its attack is getting ever higher for each dwarf that enters play. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 1 for Dane is 6. So it's going to be swinging for 7 against any enemies. And I'm also going to go ahead and pay... Yeah, I'm actually going to hold off. I'm not going to play any other cards at this point. So I could play this Veteran Axe hand, but I think I'd rather save some resources to have access to this quick strike here. So it's looking like things are good at this point. For player 2, I've got some more options here. So I don't have enough resources for the Imladris Stargazer. And during last turn's quest phase, amidst everything going on, I actually forgot to add a resource with Theodred, so I'm going to go ahead and once again put a resource on Glorfindel now. So I'm going to go ahead and use both of his resources for this Imladris Stargazer, and I think right away I'm going to go ahead and, well, no, I'm going to wait to trigger this until after staging, just in case I happen to draw something miserable like Dark and Dreadful. So I think that's pretty much good. I'll be playing 1 leadership resource in order to get a Dunedain Warning into play, and I'm going to go ahead and put that Dunedain Warning on Dane Ironfoot. So his defense is going to be a static 4 from now on. So 4 defense, 5 hit points. He doesn't have a Burning Brand, but that's pretty impressive. Even if, a goblin swings for 3 and gets an increase from this Goblin Tunnels card of 3, he's still hardly going to be taking any damage, so he should be in really good shape, and by the time I draw Arwen, hopefully with the assistance of this Imladris Stargazer, Dane Ironfoot is going to be absolute gold for defending for both players. So at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and move into questing. So player 1 is going to go ahead and commit his characters first, and I think once again I'm going to do Gimli for 3, Bifur makes it 6, Thalin is 8, I'm going to commit both of my miners to make it 10, and keep in mind I only need 4 progress tokens here, so I'm going to go ahead and do 10 there, and I'm going to go ahead and commit Theodred and Glorfindel once again for 4 for player 2. Theodred, as always, is going to target Glorfindel with his ability. Unfortunately, I don't have any Cancel When Revealed or, Cancel Shadow Effect cards to draw from. It really kind of bums me out that this deck doesn't have much stronger card draw, but be that as it may, I might be able to arrange an Ancient Matham next turn to get this player some extra cards. So at this point, I've got 14 committed to the quest, and it is time for staging. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a card. And staging card number 1 will be a Crumbling Ruin. So each player has to exhaust a character and discard the top card of his deck, just like last time. For this player here, and this is pretty miserable, I'm actually going to go ahead and discard this, exhaust and likely discard this Gondorian Spearman. So Gimli's only got 2 hit points left. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that Spearman. So I'll exhaust him and discard an Erebor Hammersmith. So the Gondorian Spearman is killed, the Hammersmith is discarded. For the second player, I think I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Glorfindel, because I know one of my Gandalfs are gone. The probability of getting a 5-cost card is going to be astronomically low, so let's go ahead and exhaust Glorfindel. And draw a card, which is a Lure of Moria. So a shame to see that go, really a shame, but it's not going to be the end of the world, because at least I've got that Glorfindel still in play. So I'm going to go ahead and discard that, and I've survived this second Crumbling Ruin. So I'm going to go ahead and discard that. Staging number 2, the card is a Goblin Scout, which is just 3 threat. It's going to take 1 damage from Thalon. None of my players are going to be able to engage it or mandatorily engage it yet, and it's looking like I'm going to be up against 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 threats. Because a goblin was revealed, I've got to go ahead and remove 2 progress tokens from the current quest card. So let's see here. Remove quest step, remove quest step. So it's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 14. I'm going to go ahead and use, well, so I've got 14, and I'm going to go ahead and use Asphalloth at this point. So I'm going to use Asphalloth to go ahead and put 2 progress tokens on this first hall here. So it's immediately going to leave play. And let me just get rid of this arrow. So as soon as it goes down here and leaves play, I'm going to gain yet another victory point, and the Bridge of Khazad-dum is going to enter the staging area. So because I've got Asphalloth, I'm never going to have to make this the active location, where I have to deal with that really, really terrible effect of not being able to play cards. It is going to add another, threat to the staging area, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and deal with that at this point. So I'm going to be up against a total of 11, and I'm only going to make 3 progress tokens at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude staging with basically that being the only thing to happen. So after questing during travel, I think I'm going to take the liberty of traveling to one of these goblin tunnels here. So it's no longer in the staging area, it's not going to be doing that effect, and right away I'm going to go ahead and activate the cave torch to put 3, well, I always add damage. I'm going to go ahead and add 3 progress tokens to the goblin tunnels here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that arrow, re-exhaust Biffer, and now since the cave torch is exhausted again, I've got to go ahead and reveal top card of the encounter deck, and let's see if it's an enemy. Okay, so once again, it was not an enemy, and that is pretty much it. That cave torch has been very invaluable this game, for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and be done with travel. I'll move on to the encounter phase, and at this point, I've got this nasty little Goblin Swordsman to deal with. So what to do? I think I'm going to go ahead and have him optionally engaged with this player here. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to combat. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1 shadow card for this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 resource from Gimli in order to play this Quick Strike. So I'm going to go ahead and Quick Strike with the Erebor Battlemaster. I'll get rid of that card there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This Erebor Battlemaster is going to be swinging for a total of 7 against the Goblin Swordsman. So the Goblin Swordsman is going to be at -4 hit points, and he's going to be immediately killed. His shadow card is not going to have gone off. It wouldn't have done anything anyway, but I definitely didn't want to risk someone like Gimli getting potentially killed, so at least there's one less thing for me to deal with. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the refresh phase, so refresh all of these characters, increase both players' threats by 1. I'm going to make player 2 the first player, and I'm going to go ahead and have each player draw 1 card. So it looks like I drew another Lure of Moria, I got another copy of Asphalloth, and at this point I'm going to be able to make an extremely powerful questing push, because I know I'm going to have this Lure of Moria available to me. I forgot to trigger the Imladris Stargazer, which is actually a pain in the ass, so keep in mind that if I weren't playing with 2 players in this game, I'd have probably remembered to trigger its ability. I could have kind of searched through my deck, maybe for something more useful than Lure of Moria. This is actually a pretty useful card to have drawn at this point, but for this upcoming turn, I'll make sure to dig for something like, oh, I don't know, Arwin Undomiel, or whatever it happens to be that I think is going to be useful. Since it's this player 2 as the first player, I'm going to make sure to try and make use of this ancient Matham on this Goblin Tunnel. So before I forget, I'm going to do resources for all of my heroes. I'm going to go ahead and trigger that Steward of Gondor again, which I have an absolutely ridiculous amount of lore resources right now. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some cards to play. I'll do 1 off of Glorfindel for sure to take control of this Ancient Matham. I'm going to go ahead and stick it to the Goblin Tunnel. So as soon as it's gone, player 2, the first player, is going to be able to draw 3 cards, which will be very, very useful. I think that's all I'm going to do at this point. So for player 2, he's got quite a few more options. I think I'm right off the bat going to spend 2 resources, 1 off of Thalon, 1 off Gimli, for a Veteran Axe Hand, which makes our Erebor Battlemaster even stronger still. If I was playing, against the Witch King or a Hill Troll, that would be extremely useful. As soon as he enters play, I get to draw a card thanks to Legacy of Durin, and I got a Feint, which is an absolutely fantastic ability. I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 resources off of Biffer for a Warden of Healing, just to start stripping some of that damage off of Gimli. There's no point in risking his life. I was kind of waiting to do this until maybe I got some damage on another character, but be that as it may, I might as well start cleaning things up a little bit here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and trigger Asphalloth now to put 2 tokens on this bridge of Khazad-dum, and the rationale behind doing that would be just in case I were to draw something like, I don't know if there are more than 2 copies of Crumbling Ruin, but no matter what, I want to make sure to get rid of that, and I want to make sure to do that when the Asphalloth is still alive and well. So if by some freak circumstance I lost Glorfindel, I want to do that now. Not concerned about any other location coming up where it's more advantageous to use it on that, because this Bridge of Khazad-dum has to go. It's preventing me from getting to Quest Phase 2, and it's generally being a big pain in the ass. I definitely don't want to make it the active location, so I think I'm done with my planning phase, and I'm going to go ahead and transition into questing. So player 2 is going to be the first player here. I'm going to go ahead and do... I think I'm going to go ahead and do an all-in here. So I'm going to go ahead and have him contribute all of his characters. So he's going to do, well, I'm going to go ahead and just commit everyone before I total it up. So player 1 is going to go ahead and contribute pretty much everybody, really. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and trigger this Lure of Moria. So all of my characters have been committed, and I'm going to play Lure of Moria to ready all dwarf characters. So I've got a free action window during this quest phase here, so I'm going to ready all these characters, even though they're still committed to the quest, and now I'm going to go ahead and figure out how much they commit. So first of all, Dane is actually committed to the quest, so he's going to benefit from his own abilities. So this player is going to add 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of the standard 4. And this player is going to do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to have committed a total of 18, which is awfully impressive before I do my staging. So first card of staging is a Zigil Mineshaft, which is actually quite the pain. So a 5-threat location might put a little bit of a hamper on my fun here, but let's see. Next card is going to be a Stairs of Nain. So I'm going to be up against a total of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'm only going to be able to make 3 progress unless I do some tricks. So first of all, I think I want to use the Cave Torch, targeting this Zigil Mineshaft here. So I'm having just a hell of a time getting rid of the arrows today, so I'm going to go ahead and put 3 progress tokens on that. I'm going to go ahead and reveal a card, because the Exhausted Cave Torch. Unfortunately, this Goblin Swordsman is added to the staging area, so it's going to contribute its own 1 threat. It's not revealed, so this is going to be, it's not going to trigger this Goblin Tunnels, but it is going to be an enemy I've got to deal with, and unfortunately, I don't have any kind of, I don't have any Goblin, Gondorian Spearmen and Thalon tricks to deal with here. So, I'm also going to trigger its ability twice. So each player is going to increase their threat by 2 to add 2 progress tokens to that. I'm going to go ahead and explore that away, which leaves 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 threat out in the staging area, which is going to be enough so I make 7 progress. So that's going to be the perfect amount so I can pass to the next quest phase. So it's going to be 4 on my active location. It leaves play, and this Ancient Mathem will trigger, so player 2 gets to draw 3 cards. Let me put this Mathem in his discard pile on second monitor, and then that's going to put 3 progress tokens on my quest phase here. So let me go ahead and draw those cards real quick. And those cards are Steward of Gondor, Imladris Stargazer, and Arwenun Domiel. So definitely nice to see. And that means we're going to go ahead and, well, we're not past our current quest phase because that Bridge of Khazad-dum is yet to be in our victory display. So we do not activate our next quest phase quite yet. When we do go to it, it's going to require 11 progress tokens to explore. We're going to have to add some enemies to the staging area, but enemies are no longer going to be revealed and added during staging, which is going to change things up a little bit. So it's going to be kind of a little bit strange. We can do it 2 different ways. We can either kill all the enemies in play or quest really hard. So it's definitely the longest quest phase is this first one. Now that we're done with questing, we've got to figure out what to do here. So I've got to decide, do I want to travel or not? I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and skip traveling and just try and deal with some of these locations in play. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move on to the engagement phase. So right now I've got 1 player whose engagement, his threat is higher than the engagement threshold of this Goblin Scout, so 37. This Goblin Swordsman is going to be optionally engaging us, so what I think I'm going to do is player 2 will optionally engage Goblin Swordsman, player 1 is going to snag this Goblin Scout. So it's looking pretty deadly adversaries here, so unless I get some really, really brutal shadow effects, I'm not too concerned about what's going to happen here. So why don't I go ahead and do it like this. I'm going to go ahead and move to combat phase. So my current first player is player 2, so he's going to get a shadow card first, and I'll resolve his attacks first. I'm going to go ahead and have Dane be the defender here against Goblin Swordsman. Its shadow effect is it gets +1. So it's not the last player, so it's going to be swinging for 4. Dane is going to have 4 defense thanks to this Dunedain warning, so he's going to take no damage. And let me get rid of this shadow card to prevent clutter. This Goblin Scout is now going to attack, and I think I'm going to go ahead and defend against it with... it's only got 1 attack value. I'm going to go ahead and block with one of these Miners of the Iron Hills. So I'm going to flip its shadow card, and the reason I'm doing this is because I'm getting a little bit concerned with, 22 cards left in the encounter deck, that it might be the sudden pitfall, discard the defending character from play. So let's see what I get. Okay, so it's going to be defending player raises his threat by 2, so I'm sitting at 41, which is pretty high. The other deck, unfortunately, does not have any cards like the Galadrim's Greeting, so hopefully it's not going to be a problem in other scenarios, this threat getting too high, but that's definitely some revision I might look at making. So this shadow effect is going to be gone. the Miner of the Iron Hills has 1 defense, 1 attack strength, does no damage, and then in return I'm going to go ahead and swing with the Erebor Battlemaster. So he's going to swing for +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going to swing for a total of 7, which brings the Goblin Scout to a total of, -6 hit points. Bug just landed on my monitor there. I had to blow it away. So it's looking like that worked out pretty well. I made a small error here resolving the last player's attack first. Glorfindel, in this case, is going to go ahead and swing for 3 to kill the Goblin Swordsman. So in both cases, the enemies are killed. A minor slip-up that shouldn't really make any difference. So Glaurung, you'll have to forgive me on that one. We'll go ahead and move on to the refresh phase, ready all of our characters, all of our attachments, boost up each player's threat by 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and make player 1 the active player. I get a little confused because on each monitor, the light darker and the underscore light darker gets switched. So it's a little bit tricky keeping track of who the first player is. I don't think I've screwed up this far, but it's very possible. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 resource to each of my characters, trigger the Steward of Gondor once again. Having this many resources on Bifur is really making me wonder if it was kind of a poor choice to put that on him, or maybe I could look at using some of those Longbeard map makers in this deck where I just have a huge bunch of lore resources to really pump them up, make them huge. So yet another option to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and draw 1 card, another Dwarodelf Axe, draw a card for my other player, which is going to be a beautiful cancel when revealed, really what I like to see since I haven't seen any Dark or Dreadfuls yet. Once again, I forgot to use my Imladris Stargazer. I'm not sure why I'm having such a hard time using that card, but I've gotten my Lure of Moria, I've gotten my Arwen Undomiel. At this point, a Test of Will is exactly what I would have searched for, so since I've got this Test of Will in my deck, I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to use the Stargazer now. This is probably going to come back to haunt me again, but we'll have to see. So now that I'm currently in this planning phase and I can go ahead and play cards, I'm going to go ahead and trigger Asphalloth to put 2 more points on this Bridge of Khazad-dum. And the reason that I'm doing that now is because it's going to be fully explored. So it's going to enter my victory display, give me 2 more victory points, and I'm going to immediately pass this first quest phase. So I'm going to move to 2A and then on to 2B. So I'm going to see exactly what's going to be sitting in the staging area, and then I can go ahead and kind of design what I'm going to play during my turn around what enters the staging area. So each player has to search the encounter deck and discard pile for 1 enemy and add it to the staging area. 1 choice has to be Patrol Leader if able. The only reason Patrol Leader wouldn't be a choice is if it was, say, in your victory display. So maybe if you were using that Out of the Wild card liberally. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to go ahead and look at all the cards in the encounter deck, pick 1 card per player, 1 enemy per player, yeah, and add it to the staging area. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and pick is I've got to pick Patrol Leader as 1 choice, and as my second choice, I think I might as well pick one of these Goblin Scouts. So long as I can kill the Patrol Leader this turn, let me close and shuffle the encounter deck, I'm going to be able to advance to the next stage of the scenario immediately. So I just looked at the encounter deck. I noticed that there's really next to no enemies left, which means I can really make use of that Cave Torch, since it's really low probability of adding enemies to the staging area. As soon as enemies are revealed from the encounter deck during staging, they're discarded instead of being added to the staging area, so this is a really good opportunity for me and to hopefully kill these 2 enemies and then push into the 3rd quest phase. Patrol Leader is really unlikely to draw an enemy card, so at this point I'm looking pretty good to finish the scenario in short order. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and do my turn. So player 1 has the chance to play cards. I think I'm going to go ahead and play 1 tactics resource to put a Dwerodelf axe on Gimli. So at this point, as you can see, with all the Durin songs I've got, with the Khazad, the Gimli being huge, the Erebor Battlemaster being huge, I'm really overkill in the attack department. But, you know, I'm also a pretty considerable quester in the same regard, so maybe that's something I'll want to take a look at in deck revisions, and again, I encourage you guys to let me know what revisions you think I could make to make these 2 decks as powerful as possible, both to kill the Balrog and to conquer any scenario yet released. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and move to player 2 and let them take an action. I think what I want to do here is I'm going to pay 2 resources off of Glorfindel, and I'm going to go ahead and put Arwen Undomiel into play finally. So she's going to be able to give Dane Ironfoot a whopping 5 defense, and importantly, Sentinel. So he's going to be an incredible defender for both players. 5 defense, 5 hit points. He doesn't have Burning Brand, but he's going to be an absolute crazy, ridiculous powerhouse. So really excited about that. And I think that's going to be the only play for this player. I'm going to go ahead and move into questing, and starting with player 1, I'm going to go ahead and commit Gimli, Biffer, these guys. Let's see, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm hopefully going to be able to kill the patrol leader, so how much I commit isn't going to matter too much. I'm going to go ahead and commit 10 there. For the other player, I'm going to go ahead and do my standard 4 plus Arwen for 6. So it's going to be a total of 16. Arwen is going to go ahead and target Dane with her ability, just like I mentioned. And let's see what we get for staging. Maybe by the end of this turn, I'll remember to use either my Warden of Healing or my Imladris Stargazer. But this is certainly, you know, far from life or death scenario thus far. So, Theodred, when his ability goes off, whoops, I'm going to go ahead and target Glorfindel. So that way he's going to have 1 resource in case he needs to cancel any kind of win-revealed effect. So let's see what I happen to get. So staging card number 1 is a Dark and Dreadful. So 1 damage to each exhausted character. In this situation, this is actually not the end of the world, so I think I'm actually going to go ahead and let this resolve. I don't have any kind of active location that's dark, so because this doesn't kill anyone, I'm going to go ahead and let this deal damage to a ton of characters. But again, nobody's dead, not the end of the world. Card number 2 is going to be a Lightless Passage. So I've got a lot of threats sitting here at the staging area. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 total. Let's see here. Something to keep in mind. Okay, no, sorry. I was thinking when I added those enemies to the staging area, they might have been revealed and triggered the Goblin Tunnels. But even if that would have been the case, which it's not, there wouldn't have been any progress tokens to remove. So, in any case, I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 threats. I've got 16 progress. I am probably going to go ahead and make some liberal use of my Cave Torch here, so I'm going to go ahead and make 2 quest progress, and once questing is done, I've got the option to travel. So, I'm going to go ahead and travel, I think, to the Stairs of Nain. So I've got to exhaust 1 character I control in order to travel there, and the character I choose to exhaust is going to be this Veteran Axe Hand. I'm going to go ahead and use the Cave Torch to add 3 progress tokens to the Lightless Passage, and because the Cave Torch exhausts, I've got to discard a card, and that card is, of course, not an enemy, so that's just going to be discarded to no effect. So things are looking very good. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the engagement phase. I'm going to go ahead and optionally engage. Well, I guess I can't optionally engage the Goblin Scout, but since this is the first player, the Goblin Scout will come down and engage with the first player. The patrol leader is going to get optionally engaged by this player. So why don't I go ahead and do my shadow cards here. So starting with the Goblin Scout, because it's got a higher engagement threshold, and how I'm going to resolve attacks is as follows. I'm going to go ahead and do this Goblin Scout, and this seems so strange, but, you know, who cares at this point. I'm going to have the Warden of Healing as the defender, so let me reveal its shadow card. Hopefully it'll be something like Crumbling Ruin, just to get that out of the way. And it's absolutely nothing, actually. So the Warden of Healing has a defense. He takes no damage from Goblin Scout. The Patrol Leader is going to be a little bit different story. So the Patrol Leader is going to be attacking, and Dane is going to use his Sentinel Defender ability to block that for player 1. So that shadow card is... defending player raises his threat by 2. So my players are having very, very high threat, but that's far from the end of the world there. Dane's 5 defense, thanks to Dunedain Warning, and Arwen is going to make sure he takes no damage at all from this ability. And now I'm going to figure out how I want to attack back. So my Erebor Battlemaster's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a total of +6 attacks, so he'll be swinging for 7, which is enough to kill the Patrol Leader. And why don't I do that? So I've got to trigger his Forced ability, discard the top card of the encounter deck. Time to figure out if this guy is going to be killed or not. So here's hoping. Okay, and since it was not an enemy, the Patrol Leader is going to be killed. So, Patrol Leader, killed. Shadow card, well, not shadow card, discarded card is discarded. And then last but not least, I will have Gimli, exhaust to attack this Goblin Scout. So right off the bat, Dwarrow-Delph Axe triggers to deal 1 damage to the Scout. Gimli himself is going to be swinging for 5, +1 because the axe is 6, so this guy is going to be dropped to a -7 total of hit points. So this Goblin Scout is very, very dead. And that is going to conclude our combat. Something to keep in mind is that now this quest phase is going to trigger, and it reads, if there are no enemies in play, immediately advance to the next stage of the scenario. So even though I've only got these measly 2 progress tokens, that does not matter. I'm going to move to 3A, and then I'm going to go ahead and transition to 3B. So at this point, heroes no longer collect resources during the resource phase, but if I defeat this stage, I win the game. So I'm on the very home stretch now. I've only got these 2 very, measly, kind of pathetic locations sitting here in the staging area. Let me go ahead and collapse these. And it's looking like, just like I said, I'm very much in the home stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and ready all of my characters. I'm going to do refresh, increase threat by 1. Player 1 is getting exceedingly high, which is a little bit scary. I might end up having to put some, some Galadrim's Greeting in place of those Elrond's Councils. Something I could maybe do is in the future put Steward of Gondor on Glorfindel and maybe toss some resources Bifur's way. I think back when I used to play my dwarf decks, that was more the strategy I followed. And then he can afford expensive cards like Galadrim's Greeting and toss resources to Bifur. So maybe that way I could do the Longbeard Mapmaker and Galadrim's Greeting, just because it seems like the amount of Khazad and Durin songs I've gotten are a little bit absurd. So in any case, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and make the first player player 2. So I'm going to go ahead and begin round 7, and we'll have to see if this is going to be our very final round here. So right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and skip the collecting resources, and I'm going to draw 1 card for each player. Player 1 gets an Asphalloth, player 2 gets this Longbeard Elder. And of course, if I would have been able to, collect resources as usual, I could have put this guy into play, and he counts as a very, very lovely 3 willpower. Especially early in the game, that could be very useful. During this final quest phase, that could be very useful. But remember, I've got these Durin song to keep in mind to use as well. And, of course, you guessed it, I forgot to use Imladris Stargazer yet again, so I guess the world will never know if things would have turned out a little bit differently, maybe a little bit better if I'd have, used her ability of any of the 3 times I've had the opportunity to use it, but I'm not too concerned about it. At this point, what I'm going to go ahead and do is take advantage of this Warden of Healing to try and lower my score here. So I'm going to start stripping wounds from my characters. So I'm going to go ahead and strip from Biffer and Thalon. I'll pay 2 resources to ready him. I'll go ahead and trigger him again to take damage off of, well, actually, I don't really give a shit about my minors. I'll take 1 point off of Gimli, 1 point off of Theodred, and let me do this a little bit differently. Let me take 2 resources off of you, and then I'll ready him, do it again, whoops, strip, and strip, and then one last time. And I can't do this too quickly because if you mash the keys, then Octagon will add resources or screw up taking them off. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull 1 off of Gimli. So at this point, none of my heroes have any wounds on them, which is going to help my overall pretty terrible score just slightly. So not a big deal, but something to do to boost my score, you know, maybe... what was it, 6 points or something like that, so 6 or 7 points, not a big deal, but it all adds up. So I'm not going to go ahead and play any cards during planning for either player, and what I'm going to do instead is skip right to questing. So I'm going to try and go all in this turn, and I'm going to try and make a total of 12 progress. So I'm going to go ahead and do Gimli, Biffer, Thalon, both of these guys. I'm going to use my Battlemaster as well. I'm going to use Theodred, Glorfindel, and Arwen. And what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and toss Theodred's resource onto... I'm going to go ahead and toss it onto Glorfindel. So let me add up my amounts here. It's going to be... Gimli 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm actually gonna ready him and commit him to the quest. So he'll be 13. So let me just verify. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do a total of 19. And now let's see what we reveal for staging. So, card number 1 is going to be a Fouled Well. So when revealed, each player may choose and discard 1 card at random from his hand. I really don't want this to gain Surge, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll do a random discard. Looks like I lost a Khazad, not a problem. And let's see here. I've got to do a random discard for this player. Let me go ahead and put all their cards in their hand really quick, and then I'll do a random discard. And that random discard was a Durin Song, which is actually a shame, because that was going to be a convenient way for me to get 2 more resources, or 2 more willpower. But be that as it may, not the end of the world. So, card number 2 is going to be a Goblin Follower, and a okay, yeah, so according to this quest, there's no, special clause where, like Quest Phase 2, it's going to be discarded instead of added to the staging area, but it is going to immediately engage the last player, which in this situation is the first player, so it's not going to contribute its threats. And before I total up the threat in the staging area, I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 leadership resource from, let's say, Theodred, a little bit squishier than Dane, for a Durin Song, which I want to play on, let's say, Gimli. Just because he's got that unexpected courage, if there were any attacking to be done, he could get +2 attack in addition to that willpower. I'm going to put that in the discard pile, so Gimli is going to bring the total to 21 committed to the quest. We've got some cards here in the staging area. Before we resolve the quest, I'm also going to use Asphalloth to put 2 points on this Lightless Passage. So that's going to be fully explored, and that's only going to leave a very, very minute 5 threat in the staging area. So there were no quest points to be removed when this Goblin Follower came into play and triggered the Goblin Tunnels. So 21 means we're going to go ahead and make a total of 16 progress. And would you look at that? The Stairs of Nain is going to absorb 4, and then that's going to leave exactly 12 progress tokens for our active quest phase. So at this point, we've got 12 out of the 12 required quest points, and we have won the game. So this was just kind of a video put together to show you guys what it's like to do a double-fisted or solo two-handed playthrough. It's generally not too bad on Octagon. I have 2 monitors set up, so it's much easier. Normally I don't have one player having control of both players' heroes like this. I don't play with, player 2 having their hand on the table. That was purely just to make sure that you guys could see it. So just picture having 2 different Octagon windows open at the same time. You just register twice, have 2 different copies of the application running, and it's really as simple as that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. You just have to make sure you take advantage of your cards like Warden of Healing, and for God's sake, remember to use your Imladris Stargazer. So other than that, I think this video went pretty well. I didn't feel too challenged by this scenario, so keep in mind these decks were very combat heavy. I'm not sure if you've got any kind of suggestions for how we could squeeze in some more questing power or maybe get some additional card draw in the second deck, but whatever you guys think I should change, be sure to let me know. I would absolutely love to hear it. So as always, let's pull up our calculator and go ahead and figure out a final score. We'll add our 2 threat totals, so 43 plus 40 brings us to 83. Let's go ahead and see what round we were on. And it looks like we were on round number 7. We did not make it to the refresh phase, so we're going to go ahead and add 60 points. 10 for each round, completed round to our total. We don't have any damage on any heroes thanks to the Warden of Healing. We don't happen to have any dead heroes, and we do have some victory points. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract our 4 victory points from our total score, which brings us to 139 for Into the Pit for my 2 quote-unquote ultimate dwarf decks. So the goal here wasn't to get an incredible score. The goal here was just to stomp this quest into pieces and to stomp every other scenario into little pieces. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, be sure to like, favorite, or subscribe this video. Let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future. Hopefully this video was informative, and this will be the first of hopefully many of these double-handed playthroughs to show up. So let me know what you think of me merging my Dwarf and Noldor decks, and check in soon for even more videos. So let me know what you guys want me to change, and I'd love to give it a shot. So see you guys next time.